Afternoon, guys. Dr. Ken Nordberg here again with another fireside hunting seminar for you. It's been an interesting series. I'm not quite sure how many different presentations are going to make on the current subject, but it could be as many as 7. It's that important. We've done some of this before. But during the past 4 years at least, maybe a little longer, whitetails have been changing quite a bit, a lot. One reason being changing climate. It's getting warmer in fall and November when we hunt whitetails. Warmer temperatures can have a dramatic effect, particularly on northern whitetails, which grow fur beginning around the 1st September. That will keep them comfortable throughout winter when temperatures are down to 40, even 45 degrees below zero. And because they grow fur like that, when it's unusually warm in, let's say October and November, their habits and behavior can become quite different than they used to be. And that's what's been happening with climate change. We're having warmer Octobers and Novembers now, and things have been happening to our whitetails that are making them more difficult to hunt as a result. And they've become less predictable. And if we could have a year when temperatures are normal and we get snow and we normally get snow in October and November, things wouldn't have changed much, but those things are changing, and so are whitetails for good reasons. It's important to their survival. Now, there's a lot of things that are becoming more and more important to us Nordbergs when we're hunting. Because of that, we like to hunt mature bucks. And we've been hunting now for 32 years. We've had excellent buck hunting for 30 years. But in recent years, our deer populations have gotten to be so low that in a 10 square mile area, we only had, like this last year, we only had 3 dominant breeding bucks. Normally we have 1 for each square mile in that 10 square miles. But the last few years now we're down to 3. And for those bucks to breed all the does living in that bigger area, they've had to divide the area up into, where each buck is taken care of maybe 3 or even more, maybe even 4 square miles, breeding with the does in those larger areas than before. And that's been hard for them to do because they have to cover a much larger area to find does in heat during that period, and vice versa. Does that are in heat will look for bucks as well. But it gets to be more complicated. Anyway, things have been changing, and it's been hard to change with them because normally I like to have several years in a row where things are happening just like happening the same 3 years in a row, and after 3 years or more you can say this is normal for whitetails today. But one hunting season can't tell you what to expect during the following hunting season unless those whitetails have already developed a habit that's going to be carried on from year to year to year. And so that's what I've been waiting for. Well, now we've had 3 years of very strange changes in habits of whitetails. For example, they're big, our older bucks 2.5, well, even yearlings, but bucks 2.5 years of age and older they've been in a frenzy of making antler rubs and ground scrapes during the 2 to 3 weeks period before breeding begins. Well, in the last 15 years, there's only been a few years where temperatures were normal during hunting seasons, and before hunting seasons began where this happened. The rest of the time, things have been really abnormal. Like in the last 3 years, there have been almost no fresh antler rubs and ground scrapes found in the woods during the period when they normally would do that. 90% of antler rubs and ground scrapes in the past were made between the 2 to 3 weeks before breeding begins in November. And then our northern states, breeding begins on November 3rd. So those 2 to 3 weeks before that is when they were making antler rubs and ground scrapes, which are markers of intended breeding ranges. And of course, not all bucks get to have breeding ranges. Only the oldest and most aggressive of the bucks finally end up owning where all the does that will be in heat in early November. But by that time, they've chased out all of these lesser bucks, and they're going to live off range. And some of the bucks don't stay off range during the period that breeding is going on, like yearling bucks. They want to get back to motherhood every time they get chased off. But at any rate, there are 3 distinct periods during which we hunt bucks in northern Minnesota. Before breeding begins, while breeding is in progress, and then after breeding is over, where things are really getting to be topsy-turvy. Like normally between the 1st of September and opening of our hunting season, our bucks have decided which among them is the most dominant, becomes the breeding buck of the area. And then he chases all these other ones out a short time, up to a week before breeding actually begins, and keeps them off range. And those lesser bucks live off range during that period. And then after breeding is over, and there are 3 breeding periods. The first one begins here on November 3rd and ends on the 17th, a 2-week period, and all the breeding in that buck's square mile. Now, normally most of our bucks have a square mile breeding range. That's their home range, square mile. And I think it has a lot to do with how far away a doe can be that's in heat, that can be smelled by a dominant breeding buck. When he smells the pheromone that doe is releasing, he'll soon join her and breed her. And if she's 2 miles away or 3 miles away, that probably won't happen. So most of those big bucks, they're kind of limited to a square mile to live in, because when they're in a square mile, they can manage breeding of all the does, and including yearling does that live in that area. And then when breeding suddenly ends and there's no more pheromone in the air, all those lesser bucks can return to their home ranges and be safe there. If they try to return earlier, they're going to have big trouble with the dominant breeding buck, because he'll fight them with the intention of causing bodily harm to those deer. Sometimes those dominant breeding bucks will actually kill lesser bucks during that period. But after that, no problem. They can come back and live in their previous home ranges just fine after breeding ends during that first period. So there's 3 different things going on during the periods that we hunt whitetails. And if you go out there in the woods and you pick out one stand site for whatever reason, and if it isn't something that will give you good odds of taking a buck, like say a big dominant breeding buck, one for the wall, if it doesn't provide you with good odds of taking that buck in that particular period, your odds are not going to be very good. And that keeps changing. It changes 3 times during this period we've been talking about. Before breeding begins, while breeding is in progress, and then after breeding is over. Now, climate change has been lousing that up. This has been, those kind of periods have been customs of whitetails for thousands of years, 10,000 years. And all of a sudden it's different. All of a sudden it's been too warm in October, when they like to select breeding ranges and mark them with antler rubs and ground scrapes to tell other bucks, this is my range. Of course, the only one that gets to keep that those areas is the big dominant buck. He gets them all within about a square mile, roughly. Those are his from then on, once those other bucks are chased out of there. But all of a sudden, it's been too warm in October for them to get serious about making these markers, antler rubs and ground scrapes, that designate the home range that each buck wants to have for breeding. Well, so that hasn't been going on very much. Nowadays, you don't see near the antler rubs and ground scrapes before breeding begins that we used to. Used to be 90% of those were made before breeding began, before November 3rd, and not much after that. As few are renewed during the period while does are in heat, but not many. Most of it was done before that happened, and then all of a sudden, does start releasing the pheromone into the air that tells the big dominant buck it's in heat. And the buck doesn't have much time to mark those things anymore, to renew the musk odors on antler rubs and ground scrapes. So these things keep changing, and then of course when breeding is over, that first 2-week period during which time 85% of does are bred, things are different again, and the other bucks come back. So you have to realize, if you're going to be a buck hunter, which my boys and I have been since, we started thinking seriously about hunting bucks only in 1960, when I first began my whitetail research with wild deer in Aiken County, Minnesota. And I've been at it ever since. Things have changed a lot. Now, a lot of my earlier books, well, like my second edition Whitetail Almanac, which hasn't been available for years, explain exactly what goes on during each of these phases of the rut and when, and what to look for as signs that tell you this is happening and this is where you should be hunting as a result. Because if you aren't hunting in the right place when all these changes are happening, you're out of luck. You probably won't even see a big buck. So it's important to know when all this is going to happen. Well, all of a sudden, it's not happening. Because our deer in northern states, here in Minnesota particularly, they grow fur beginning around the 1st of September that's warm enough to keep them comfortable through long periods of temperatures as low as 40 to 45 degrees below zero. Thick fur. And when it's too warm, when the temperatures are over 50 degrees, they aren't much interested in anything, including making and renewing antler rubs and ground scrapes, and even eating. They're going to spend most of their time bedded in some hideaway during this period, particularly if it's a hunting season is in progress during daylight hours when it's like that. Or if they're being hunted by lots of wolves like they are where I hunt. Not much activity going on during daylight hours, even when breeding is in progress. And so, in the old days we used to think, boy, once does are in heat, it's going to be like a circus out there, with deer running all over the place and bucks chasing does, and boy, is that going to make it easy to take big bucks. Well, it almost seemed that way for many years. When we were back in the 1970s, when my family and I got to be pretty good at hunting older bucks, it almost seemed like, boy, this is so easy if you know what to do and when to do it. But now it's different again because of global warming. When temperatures are much over 50 degrees, those big bucks are going to stay in their beds all day long. And most of their activity, including breeding and searching for does in heat, will occur at night in darkness during that period. That's what's going on now because of higher temperatures in October and November. And so things are really starting to change. It's becoming really difficult to hunt whitetails in a lot of states, like northern states, where we've had unseasonably warm temperatures in October and November, and it really goofing up this whole program or these customs that whitetails have had for 10,000 years. And so that's what we're dealing with today. Now, we've been seeing this change going on in my study area, 10 square miles. It started out at 6 and it got to be 10 after a while. But we've been seeing these changes going on for many years. And starting to worry about it because it's goofing up our proven effective hunting methods. And gee, when we don't even get snow on the ground in November, that really makes it tough. And when it's too warm for bucks to make antler rubs and ground shapes, that's really goofing up things. And when the deer don't even want to move during daylight hours because it's too warm, when temperatures up between 50 and 70 degrees, they don't even want to move from their beds during daylight hours. And then when you only have about 3 deer per square mile after 47 years of deprivation by wolves in your hunting, you don't have very many deer left in that area. It gets to be even worse. So that's what us Nordbergs have been dealing with during the last 3 years. Until this last 3 years, it was our habit to take at least 4 mature bucks every year. Then we'd quit. That was our own limit. So we didn't overhunt our bucks in that area. And you know, like if you're hunting a 6 square mile, you got 6 of those big dominant breeding bucks. And if you were to shoot 4 every year, pretty soon you'd run out of big bucks. So we didn't want that to happen. We have 10 square miles. But what's been happening is that, you know, with our deer population dropping off that way, and with older bucks, well, an old buck is 6.5 years of age, and almost none of them, where we hunt, will survive their 7th winter. By that time, they're old. If they had whiskers, their whiskers would be long and white. And they have arthritis and other problems, and they're slowed because of that. And they become easy victims of wolves during that period. Yeah, Johnny just motioned to me about teeth. Yeah, they wear down their teeth by that time. It gets harder for them to chew food. But anyway, now does can live quite a bit longer. They can live more than 10 years. And bucks just wear themselves out eventually over all their shenanigans much sooner in life than does do. But at any rate, things have been changing. You know, gee, now we hardly see any antler rubs and ground scrapes because it's been warm. Now, like this year during our hunting season, on opening day we had a high temperature of 70 degrees. We had a high temperature of 70 degrees the year before that. And the year before that and the year before that we had a blizzard with deep snow, which is one of the things that can happen when you have abnormally high temperatures in November. Besides, you know, the effect of warmer temperatures screwing up customs of the rut in white-tailed deer. And so it's been getting harder to hunt them, and it's been kind of interesting. Now that we've had 3 years of that, plus a little bit on some of these things, we now can be certain about what we're finding is normal for today. The kind of things that whitetail hunters from Washington, well, there aren't many whitetails in the state of Washington, but from the West Coast to the East Coast, you know, from Virginia north, can expect every year. Yeah, the kind of problems we're having here in Minnesota, you're having where you hunt as well, because of global warming. And if you have wolves of any number and you're hunting, you're also having that problem. Those two things are really goofing things up. And if you're going to have good hunting in areas like that, you have to do things differently today. And so, that's what this next series of seminars is going to be all about. How to be more successful in areas where you have a lot of wolves and global warming. We've all got global warming is happening to the south end of Florida, to the south end of Texas. But it's all over. They're being affected as well as our northern deer. But I don't know for sure, you know, since my wife died, I haven't been keeping track of deer down in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona like I did annually years ago. And I could keep track of their changes during that time. But we were starting to see early signs of the same changes going on down in Texas, for example, as we see here in Minnesota, only maybe at a little later date. And so that, which is common because the rut well, the period of the rut is determined by a certain ratio of darkness sunlight. And so that happens earlier in the northern part of the United States than in the southern part. So in the southern part of the United States, those things happen a little bit later. But still, they're the same thing. So now you know what we're talking about. Okay, with that, I'll quit now. And thanks for watching. And remember now, Christmas coming, there's still time to order books, and they can usually be there within 4 days. And remember too that when you order them from my website, you can get a free previously published book. And they're smaller books, but you get a free one. That's $10 value, so that's kind of nice to get. So keep that in mind. And if you're ordering for a husband or a son or a daughter or an uncle or a dad or whatever, be sure to mention on the form who it's for. So when I autograph it, I can put to whoever it's for. You know, personally autograph it for that person. So do that. Well, okay, well, thanks again for watching, guys, and be sure to hit that subscribe button and the thumbs up if you enjoyed what you learned today. And as a favor to me, because that's important to my future as a YouTube seminar speaker. Okay, see you again soon. Be sure to visit my website. Here's the link. Here you'll find links to my blog posts, my Twitter account, my YouTube account, my Amazon store with links to my ebooks, my son's eBay store, a money saver if you're ordering from Canada or other countries, my website bookstore, and much more.